The most clutch driver in the history of NASCAR is Kevin Harvick. On his way to the Hall of Fame, Kevin notched himself 60 victories, including a Daytona 500 and a championship in the Cup Series. But more impressive than these stats was the incredible ice in his veins in the closing laps of so many races. 5 of Harvick's wins came in races where he led less than 5 laps. For context, Denny Hamlin has 0 of these kinds of wins. Kyle Larson has only done it once, Kyle Busch only twice. Even Jeff Gordon, Richard Petty, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. don't come close to this number of wins with less than 5 laps led. This incredible clutch factor earned Kevin Harvick the honorable nickname The Closer, which he truly lived up to. So how is he so clutch? And how did he pull these wins out of thin air? This is the story of how Kevin Harvick became Mr.
Where did he come from?
Kevin Harvick's NASCAR Cup Series career started in 2001 when he was 25. He was thrust into the late Dale Earnhardt's car as his replacement. With 0 Cup experience, 0 time for preparation, a grieving team, and extremely big shoes to fill, no one would have thought twice if Harvick had a poor rookie season. But with all the odds stacked against him, he pulled off a miracle in his 3rd ever race. From this race on, Kevin was solidified as a great NASCAR driver, but he didn't truly forge a reputation for his clutchness until a few years later. Aside from being famous for his ability to perform when the lights get bright, Kevin Harvick was also well known for his domination at Phoenix. He won 9 Cup races at the track from 2006 to 2018. His first victory at the track was one of the first tastes of his tendency to snatch a win out of nowhere. At the spring race in 2006, Harvick led 0 laps and was running in 3rd place until there were less than 15 laps to go. At this point, Kevin somehow grabbed another gear and drove straight past Tony Stewart for 2nd and straight past Greg Biffle for 1st, to win his first of many Phoenix races with only 10 laps led out of 312. One of Harvick's most impressive accomplishments was his Daytona 500 win in 2007, but it wasn't just any old Daytona win. Harvick had led only 3 laps in the middle of the race and had spent much of the night fighting through the tough midfield. As the race grew more and more chaotic, Harvick creeped closer and closer to the front, but still nobody paid attention to him. Eventually the race would be settled by a green-white checkered finish, and on this restart Harvick was still way in the back, no one considering him a factor for the win. Even after a full lap, Harvick hadn't made much progress, but on the backstretch during the final lap, Kevin turned it into overdrive. He burned straight past several rows and found himself side by side with Mark Martin for the lead, where he side-drafted him down to an incredible photo finish as the field wrecked behind them. After all that, after Mark Martin's most valiant effort to finally win a Daytona 500 in his long and storied career, Kevin Harvick had completely snatched it in the last stretch by only a few feet with the incredible ice in his veins. The next of Harvick's wins with less than 5 laps led came at Talladega in 2010. Kevin qualified 4th and pulled away from the pack quickly in a tandem with Matt Kenseth. He swapped positions with Matt to get the bonus point for leading a lap, but it wasn't long before the tandem fell apart and the two were shuffled back into the middle of the pack. After this, Harvick would not lead even one of the next 190 laps. Whether by choice to try to dodge the wrecks or just a lack of speed, Kevin ran in the back of the pack around 30th for the majority of the middle portion of the race. With around 50 to go, Kevin was able to tandem his way up to 2nd, but quickly fell back again as he got hung out to dry by the single file pack. Harvick didn't give up though, and was able to push his way back to about 16th before a caution came out with a little over 10 laps to go. Kevin stayed out on the pit cycle and restarted 6th. After another crash, Harvick had lost a spot and restarted 7th. He was only moving backwards, and with only 2 laps to go, it seemed he was really out of the picture for this race win. This time, Harvick was able to squeeze by 2 cars before the big one struck, but he was still restarting in the 3rd row and a bit of a dark horse to win it with a green-white checkered finish. After some clever driving with Denny Hamlin, Harvick snuck his way up another couple of positions and would restart 3rd for the final attempt at an overtime finish. Harvick latched onto Jamie McMurray and pushed him into next week, absolutely slamming his bumper all the way clean to the front of the field. At this point, it was now between him and McMurray. McMurray was the most dominant driver left in the race. He had led more laps than anyone aside from Jeff Burton, who crashed earlier. Harvick had led 1 lap, but that didn't matter to him. He pushed Jamie onto the front stretch, then made a move to get underneath him, and stole the win once again in the last few hundred feet. As Larry McReynolds said after the finish,
He timed it perfect!
when you add up the actual time that Kevin Harvick led this race, it must be less than 50 seconds. He led a 3.5-hour race for less than 50 seconds and won it. Nothing less should be expected from the closer himself. 2011 was an incredible streak of pulling off the magic moves for Harvick. The first instance was at Fontana. Kevin started way back in 24th, but through the course of the day worked his way up into the top 10. By the halfway mark at lap 100, Harvick was 6th, but this is where he started to stall out. He eventually got up to 3rd, but after a caution came out he dropped back to 6th on the restart and really was a non-factor compared to Kyle Busch, who led 150 laps. Then Bobby Labonte blew his right front tire, and there was one last restart, one last chance for everyone other than Kyle Busch to take the challenge to him. Restarting 5th, no one was watching Kevin Harvick. All eyes were fixated on Kyle Busch versus Jimmie Johnson for the lead and for the win. Even after a full lap, Harvick hadn't made much progress. But eventually Kevin methodically made his way back up to 3rd, where he had a perfect view of the battle ahead. As the leaders fought side by side with 3 to go, Harvick entered the picture, ripping his car around the high line. By the next lap he was all over their bumpers and forced Kyle Busch to make a mistake. Now Harvick only had to pass the 5-time champion Jimmie Johnson. He caught Jimmie, and instead of making the obvious move to go low, Harvick pushed him down the backstretch and took the high line. Now he could absolutely send it around the top, and he did, and snatched the lead and the victory from Johnson in the last half mile of a 400-mile race. One lap was all Harvick needed to win at Fontana, and the very next week at Martinsville was a similar story. Harvick had an up and down day, but mostly down, leading only one lap due to an off-cycle pit strategy. With 150 laps to go at the shortest track in NASCAR, 20th place track position, and damage to his rear bumper, no one was expecting Harvick to win the race, even after what he had done the week prior. But by the time 25 laps had passed, Kevin was up to the top 10. 50 laps later he was in the top 5. Another 35 laps passed and he was in the top 3. He was still several seconds off the lead and not in position to fight for the win, but a caution came out once again and he had a shot. A speeding penalty for Jimmie Johnson then allowed Harvick to restart 2nd. With the inferior outside line, Harvick quickly fell back to 4th place on the restart, but just as quickly as he lost the spots, he started to gain them. He repassed Juan Pablo Montoya and the commentators started laughing, knowing what was coming.
Junior better drive it like he stole it right now. Out the windshield, not the back glass.
5 laps later he got past Kyle Busch for 2nd. 10 laps later he cruised by Dale Earnhardt Jr. and held him off with his destroyed bumper for the remaining 4 laps, en route to back-to-back weeks of come-from-behind victory.
2 weeks in a row.
The final clutch moment of 2011 for Harvick came at one of NASCAR's crown jewel events, the Coke 600. This time Kevin started way back in 28th, but by halfway was firmly in the top 10. Harvick fought all day to stay in contention, reaching as high as 2nd place for a stretch with under 100 laps to go. After this he fell back, and with less than 20 laps remaining, Harvick was running 9th. In a normal race he would have no chance, but at the Coke 600 in this era, fuel saving was crucial, and nobody knew who had enough fuel to make it to the end. The laps ticked down and things grew intense. By 7 laps to go, the first driver in the top 10 had fallen, as Matt Kenseth had to pit. A lap later, Jeff Gordon had to stop. Then Jimmie Johnson's engine blew up, and things got even more intense. The leaders all stayed out and had to save even more fuel because of the overtime laps. Harvick received some assistance in fuel saving from his destroyed teammate Paul Menard. Then Jeff Burton joined in to help. Greg Biffle didn't have this help, he was the next who had to pit. On the restart, Kasey Kahne instantly ran out of fuel and nearly caused a huge wreck. Despite this, the race stayed green and the new running order was Dale Jr., who was low on fuel, Denny Hamlin, who was low on fuel, and Kevin Harvick, who was also low but had the help from his teammates. On the backstretch of the final lap, Hamlin ran out of fuel and Harvick made his way by. Then as they entered the final corner, we saw a heartbreak for Junior Nation and the inevitability of Kevin Harvick.
He's out of gas. And as at Indy, the leader at turn 4 does not get to the flag. Harvick, the closer, wins it.
Once again, Kevin Harvick had led a single green flag lap, this time even shorter than he did at Fontana, and pulled off the upset just when we were all forgetting he was in contention. He probably couldn't have done it this time without his teammates helping him though. There was one more race left where Harvick would win with less than 5 laps led. It came at Richmond in 2013. It was another race where Harvick started in the midfield and worked his way into the top 10 and ran there for much of the night without leading. The race had tons of spins and crashes, so Kevin took the opportunity to pit with 60 laps remaining and became one of the first cars on fresh tires. With the newer rubber, Harvick sliced and diced his way through the field from the mid-teens to chasing the leader in about 40 laps. When another caution came out, Kevin pitted and became the second car with 4 fresh tires. Because some cars stayed out and some took only 2 tires, Harvick and the former leader Juan Pablo Montoya started back in 6th and 7th, with Kevin having the preferred bottom lane. With the better spot, Kevin blazed by 5 drivers in the first 2 turns, making incredible 3-wide passes and put himself on the bumper of Jeff Burton on the backstretch. He immediately left Burton and his old tires in the dust too, and sailed away to a victory, leading his only 2 green flag laps in the final 2 laps. Perhaps Harvick's greatest accomplishment as the closer marked a shift in the trajectory of his career. Kevin had led a dominant 2014 season with 4 wins and was in the final 4 for the championship race at Miami. Unlike the other races discussed in this video, Harvick was in the mix and led laps all throughout the day. What made this race special was the weight it held, and how with less than 50 laps to go, Harvick was stuck behind Denny Hamlin for the championship lead. But when a caution came out with about 30 laps to go, everyone pitted and everyone knew what was about to happen. Harvick activated clutch mode and instantly passed Denny Hamlin on the restart, catapulting himself into the championship lead. But it didn't stop there. Another caution came out about 10 laps later, and Harvick pitted for 4 tires when Hamlin and Newman didn't. This put Harvick way back in 12th, and he gave everything he had to wheel his car up through the field. Another caution came out and gave him one more shot to get by the 2 championship contenders ahead, and he did just that. One last caution came out and he held onto the lead like his life depended on it.
He's going to do it! He's going to win the race and the NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship. California's Kevin Harvick does it!
Harvick had just maneuvered his way through all of the craziness at the end of the first ever championship race and locked down his Cup Series championship. There were a number of other instances where Harvick pulled off a win on a day where it didn't look like he could. Namely the 2013 Coke 600 where he pitted for tires from 2nd and won when he didn't have the fastest car, the 2016 fall race at New Hampshire where he went from 4th to 1st with less than 15 laps to go to win when he hadn't led at all prior, and the 2018 New Hampshire race when he pulled the bump and run on Kyle Busch with 7 laps to go. But at the later stages of his career, Kevin Harvick became so dominant that he began to not need this incredible ice in his veins to win every week. From his championship season forward, he won 8 races in which he led over 200 laps, something that he had only done once in the 13 years of his career prior. In these years, he really went from the beloved Mr. Where Did He Come From to the guy who was so dominant that people just wanted him to lose. In 2020, he won 9 races, and after 2023 retired as one of the sport's greatest drivers of all time, currently having the 10th most wins in the history of NASCAR. While he may not have had the spectacular, out-of-nowhere wins towards the very end of his career, there was no question about whether or not he was a good driver. In many years, it was just obvious. He was the best. Thanks for watching, everyone.